Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in Christ, today I want to take you on a journey into the heart of God's promises, a journey that will awaken hope, ignite faith, and remind you of the incredible truth. There is a blessing with your name written on it, and God Himself is preparing to unlock it for you. Perhaps you have been waiting, praying, and longing for a breakthrough that seems just beyond reach. Maybe life has been challenging, filled with delays, disappointments, and moments where it felt like your prayers were echoing into silence. But today, I want you to hear a powerful truth that will transform the way you see your waiting, your struggles, and your faith. Nothing God has reserved for you can be lost, delayed, or stolen, and when He decides it is time, the blessing will flow into your life in ways beyond your imagination. Think for a moment about how God works in ways we cannot always see. While we are walking in our daily routines, He is orchestrating circumstances, aligning opportunities, and preparing both the blessing and the one who is to receive it. Every season of waiting, every moment of testing, and every challenge you face is a step toward readiness, a divine shaping that ensures that when the blessing arrives, you are fully equipped to receive it with gratitude, wisdom, and faith. This is not a story of luck or chance. It is a story of purpose, precision, and divine timing. God is never late, He is never careless, and He has never forgotten you. Today, we will explore how God's perfect timing, His protection, and your faith intersect to unlock what has been reserved just for you. You will discover that the delays you thought were frustrating were actually divine preparation, that the moments of silence were God's protection, and that your persistence in prayer and obedience are the keys to opening doors that no one can close. This is a message of hope, a declaration of God's faithfulness, and a revelation that the best is yet to come for each of you. So I invite you to open your hearts, to lift your eyes beyond the struggles and doubts, and to prepare your spirit to receive what God has already written with your name on it. Let us journey together through the promises, the preparation, and the power of God's blessings, knowing that by the end of this message, you will not only believe in the reality of your reserved blessing, but you will also be inspired to step boldly into the life God has destined for you. Your blessing is not delayed, it is being prepared. Your breakthrough is not denied, it is being aligned. And your moment of divine favor is not far, it is closer than you think. Stay with me, and let us uncover the fullness of what God has promised, because today is the day your faith meets His favor. His timing is perfect and personal, shaped uniquely for each life, and woven with intention into the story He is writing. Long before you took your first breath, God had already prepared blessings, opportunities, relationships, and breakthroughs that were meant specifically for you. These blessings are not generic or mass-produced. They are tailored to the shape of your destiny, carrying the fingerprints of a God who knows every detail of your heart. Sometimes we struggle when we look around and see others receiving what we have prayed for, moving into seasons we long for, or stepping into breakthroughs we've waited years to see. But God does not operate on human schedules. Heaven's time is not determined by what is trending, what is urgent to us, or what appears delayed. Heaven's time responds only to divine wisdom, and that wisdom never fails. There are moments when life feels slow, when we pray and the silence feels heavy, when we walk through days that repeat without visible change. In such seasons, the enemy whispers that maybe God forgot, maybe the blessing passed by, maybe something was lost along the way. But what God reserves cannot be misplaced. What He sets aside cannot expire. What He writes your name on remains yours, untouched by the rush of time or the pressure of circumstances. When you feel delayed, you are not forgotten, you are being timed. God never hands out premature gifts, because premature blessings can become overwhelming weights. He knows when your strength, character, and spirit are aligned with the gift He has prepared. God's timing is also deeply personal. He sees your tears, your private struggles, your longings that you shared with no one, and He factors every one of them into His plan for your life. He knows the exact moment when the blessing will lift you, not harm you. He knows the moment when the door will grow you, not break you. He knows when your heart is ready to carry what you once begged Him to give. There are blessings that require maturity, patience, and spiritual depth. If God gave them too early, they might slip through your fingers, so instead He holds them, not as a denial, but as a preparation, until the moment you are ready to walk into them with confidence, wisdom, and gratitude. Often God's perfect timing becomes clear only in hindsight. There are seasons you thought were wasted, but they were actually years of shaping. There were prayers you thought were ignored, but heaven was busy aligning things behind the scenes. There were doors that stayed shut, not because you were unqualified, but because God was preserving something better, something safer, something more aligned with your calling. When the breakthrough finally comes, you will look back and understand why the waiting was necessary. You will see how God protected you from things you did not know to fear. You will understand how God saved you from paths that would have drained you. You will realize that the blessing could only flourish once your roots were deep enough to hold it. This is why your waiting is not wasted. Every prayer, every test, every tear-filled night is part of God's precise timing. Just because you cannot see movement does not mean God is not working. Heaven moves in silence long before it moves in sight. God arranges meetings, shifts hearts, changes seasons, and prepares opportunities that you will walk into at the exact moment they were meant for you. When God finally unlocks the blessing, it will feel sudden, but it will not be sudden to Him. It will be the fulfillment of a plan He designed before your life began, a blessing reserved with your name on it, waiting for the perfect moment He already ordained. When God sets something aside specifically for you, it becomes untouchable by the powers of darkness and untouched by the uncertainty of life. Many times we fear that if we do not act fast enough, someone else will claim what we have prayed for or worked toward. We may feel anxious when doors seem closed or when the blessings we expected remain unseen. Yet, the truth is that God's blessings are not subject to competition or human timing. What is written with your name on it belongs to you, and God Himself ensures its preservation until the appointed moment. The enemy may attempt to intimidate, to discourage, or to derail, but he cannot take what God has secured. Spiritual promises are protected in heaven's treasury, held in divine custody until the exact time of release. When blessings are hidden, it is not because God has forgotten or because they are unattainable. Rather, it is because they are being safeguarded. The enemy might try to tempt us into doubt, fear, or impatience, whispering that opportunities have passed us by. But these lies have no foundation. What God reserves cannot be stolen by deception or manipulation. There is an invisible barrier that protects these blessings, and it operates according to God's wisdom, not our understanding. Often, the enemy will create situations that test our patience or challenge our faith, attempting to make us feel that the blessing is slipping away. This is the very moment to stand firm, to trust God's promise, and to recognize that divine protection surrounds what is ours. Every attempt to steal, delay, or diminish God's gift is ultimately powerless against His sovereign plan. The concept of divine reservation is also a lesson in trust and perseverance. Life will bring seasons where we see others advancing or achieving milestones that align with our prayers, and we may feel envious or frustrated. Yet God's design is personal, not universal. He measures each blessing according to His perfect knowledge of who we are, our readiness, and the time that will maximize the blessing's impact. If He released it too early, it could be misused, misunderstood, or wasted. By keeping the blessing reserved, God ensures that it arrives fully prepared, perfectly timed, and accompanied by the spiritual and emotional capacity to handle it. This divine preservation is an act of love, showing that God is attentive to every detail of our lives and that nothing He gives is random or hasty. Faith becomes the key to accessing these preserved blessings. We cannot see them, but we can trust their reality. We cannot touch them, but we can speak life, hope, and expectation over them. Belief in God's protection transforms our waiting from frustration into confidence. The enemy may try to sow seeds of doubt, but our faith stands as a shield, confirming that the blessing is ours and cannot be overtaken. Every act of obedience, every moment of prayer, every step of integrity strengthens the spiritual chain holding that blessing until the appointed time. God's power is greater than human limitation, and His promises are immovable in the face of trials or opposition. It is also important to remember that these blessings are not mere rewards. They are part of God's greater plan for our lives. They are designed to fulfill a purpose, to align with our calling, and to bring glory to Him. No adversary can alter that plan, for the blessings are intertwined with destiny, not chance. When the moment arrives, the blessing will not only be evident, but will surpass what we imagined, exceeding the enemy's attempts to steal, delay, or diminish it. Understanding this principle brings peace in the waiting seasons, confidence in the face of opposition, and boldness in prayer, knowing that what God has reserved is perfectly protected and completely ours. Many times we focus solely on the end result, yearning for the breakthrough, the opportunity, or the gift, without realizing that God is shaping us in the process. The blessing is already prepared, but God's divine wisdom dictates that the recipient must also be prepared. He refines our character, strengthens our faith, and aligns our spirit so that when the blessing arrives, we are capable of handling it fully and responsibly. This preparation may involve periods of challenge, testing, or waiting, but these are not punishments. They are essential steps in the spiritual and emotional development that enables us to receive what has been written specifically for us. God's preparation process is often quiet and unseen. We may not recognize it at the moment, and we may even question why circumstances seem difficult, stagnant, or confusing. Yet, each trial, each season of waiting, and each moment of discipline contributes to building the resilience and maturity necessary for the blessing to be fully effective. Just as a seed must be planted in fertile soil, nurtured, and allowed to grow before it produces fruit, our spiritual and personal growth must be cultivated before we are ready to enjoy the fullness of God's favor. The delays, the detours, and the challenges are not signs of neglect. They are expressions of divine care, ensuring that when the door opens, we enter fully equipped to embrace the opportunity without fear or hesitation. Preparation also involves alignment with God's will. The blessings God reserves are not random gifts. They are designed to serve His purposes and to fulfill our calling. God shapes our hearts, our desires, and our actions so that we become vessels capable of carrying His provision in ways that glorify Him. If we receive a blessing too soon, without the necessary preparation, it may lead to confusion, misuse, or disappointment. God's patience ensures that when we finally receive what has been set aside for us, it will not only meet our needs, but will also serve His higher plan. In this way, the period of preparation is as valuable as the blessing itself, teaching lessons of perseverance, faith, and obedience that will sustain us in the seasons to come. The preparation process also strengthens our faith. Each test and trial becomes an opportunity to trust in God's timing, to rely on His wisdom, and to deepen our relationship with Him. Waiting is not passive, it is active faith in action. By walking through challenges with integrity, by continuing in prayer, and by maintaining hope when circumstances seem contrary, we cultivate a spiritual readiness that makes the eventual release of the blessing more powerful and transformational. Our character, patience, and understanding grow in proportion to the time spent in preparation, ensuring that we are not only ready to receive the blessing but also ready to steward it well. God's preparation is also about perspective. While we may focus on the immediate desire for the blessing, God is teaching us to see beyond the present, to trust in His eternal plan, and to recognize that the journey is as significant as the destination. He cultivates in us wisdom, discernment, and resilience that cannot be gained in a single moment of fulfillment. By shaping our hearts and minds in advance, He ensures that when the blessing is unlocked, we will recognize its value, handle it with gratitude, and use it in ways that honor Him and impact others positively. This preparation phase is a sacred investment orchestrated by God to ensure that what is given is not fleeting but enduring, and that our lives are transformed in alignment with His divine purpose. Faith is not simply a passive hope or wish. It is an active trust in God's promises and His timing. It is the force that bridges the invisible realm of God's provision with the tangible experiences of our lives. The blessings God has stored are already prepared, but without faith, they remain unseen and inaccessible. When we step forward in belief, even when circumstances suggest delay or impossibility, we begin to align ourselves with the spiritual forces that bring God's promises into manifestation. Every prayer offered in sincerity, every sacrifice made in obedience, every moment of waiting with patience strengthens the spiritual connection between us and the blessings God has destined for our lives. Faith requires consistency and courage. It is easy to pray when life is smooth, when doors appear open, and when progress is visible. True faith, however, perseveres in silence, continues in hardship, and stands firm when obstacles seem insurmountable. God often measures the depth of our faith in seasons where the outcome is not yet visible. The unseen nature of God's blessings tests our commitment and trains our hearts to rely on His wisdom rather than our understanding. Every act of obedience, no matter how small, becomes a key in the spiritual realm. Each time we refuse to give up, each time we trust God instead of our fears, and each time we continue to hope despite delays, we are effectively turning the key that unlocks the doors of heaven's provision. Faith transforms waiting from frustration into a spiritual act of participation in God's plan. Prayer and spiritual alignment are crucial components of faith. When we pray in alignment with God's will, we are actively engaging with the forces that release our blessings. These prayers are not mere requests. They are expressions of trust that reinforce the connection between the promise and its fulfillment. Obedience amplifies faith, for each act of following God's direction demonstrates readiness to receive what He has reserved. When we faithfully walk in integrity, love, and service, we are not only preparing ourselves to receive the blessings, but also making the blessings effective and fruitful in our lives. Faith is the channel through which God's power flows, transforming what is reserved into what is experienced. Without faith, blessings may remain in the unseen realm, waiting for the heart that will unlock them. Faith also strengthens endurance. Life often tests our patience with circumstances that appear contrary to God's promises. Challenges, setbacks, and delays are part of the process of refining belief and reinforcing spiritual resilience. Faith teaches us that the delay is not denial, that opposition is not defeat, and that trials are not the absence of God's favor. By holding firmly to God's promises, we demonstrate readiness to receive the blessings in their fullness. Each test of faith is an opportunity to prove that the blessings, when released, will be met with a heart prepared to steward them wisely. The more we trust, the more we participate in the unlocking of the treasures God has set aside. Finally, faith invites partnership with God in the manifestation of His blessings. While God has already prepared the provision, He calls us to actively engage, to believe, and to step forward in expectation. Faith is the spiritual key that transforms potential into reality, turning the reserved blessings into experiences of fulfillment, joy, and transformation. Every moment of trust, every step of obedience, and every prayer of expectation contributes to opening the door of God's provision, ensuring that when the blessing arrives, it arrives fully empowered, fully impactful, and fully aligned with the divine purpose God has ordained for our lives. Faith is not passive. It is the spiritual force that unlocks the blessings with our name on them, making the unseen seen and the promised reality. Often we struggle with waiting. We pray fervently, we hope earnestly, and we anticipate eagerly, only to face periods where nothing seems to move, where doors remain closed, and where the blessings we long for appear to be delayed. In these moments, it is easy to feel frustrated, confused, or even abandoned. Yet, the truth is that the delay itself is a sign of God's care. He withholds not because He is unwilling, but because He is orchestrating circumstances in such a way that when the blessing arrives, it arrives at the right time, in the right form, and with maximum impact. God's protection is often hidden in what we perceive as postponement, for He sees dangers, distractions, and complications that we do not, and He guards us from what would harm, mislead, or overwhelm us. The principle of divine protection reveals that not every opportunity is meant to be seized immediately, and not every blessing is meant to be received at the first moment we desire it. Had God allowed the blessing to come too soon, without the proper timing, it could have been mismanaged, misunderstood, or even wasted. The delay is strategic, ensuring that we have the spiritual maturity, emotional readiness, and practical preparation to handle what is coming. Every period of waiting is therefore an act of divine wisdom, designed to shield us from premature exposure to situations that could compromise the blessing or hinder our growth. The unseen hand of God works tirelessly to align circumstances, relationships, and opportunities so that when the moment arrives, it arrives perfectly timed. Delays also refine our character and deepen our faith. Waiting is never wasted when it is guided by God's hand. In the silence, our trust in Him is tested and strengthened. In the pauses, patience is cultivated, resilience is built, and humility is developed. God uses these periods to shape our hearts, to align our desires with His will, and to prepare us to steward the blessing responsibly. The longer the preparation, the greater the capacity for gratitude, the stronger the endurance, and the deeper the understanding of the value of the gift. This is why the most powerful breakthroughs often follow seasons of waiting. The blessing is not diminished by delay, it is enhanced by divine preparation, so that when it finally arrives, it exceeds all expectation and fulfills a purpose that we could not have imagined. The delay also teaches discernment and wisdom. During periods when the blessing is withheld, we learn to navigate challenges, make choices carefully, and recognize what is essential versus what is superficial. God uses the waiting period to refine our judgment, strengthen our decision-making, and teach us reliance on Him rather than on our own understanding. This preparation ensures that when the blessing is released, it is met with readiness, clarity, and confidence. The timing protects us from mistakes, missteps, and potential harm that could arise from premature access to what God has reserved. Furthermore, understanding that delay is protection transforms the way we perceive trials and opposition. When circumstances seem contrary to our hopes, when doors remain closed, or when we face setbacks, we are not to despair or assume failure. Instead, we are to recognize that God's wisdom is at work, orchestrating the perfect moment for the blessing to arrive. What feels like a setback is often a setup for something greater, a redirection towards something safer, better, and divinely appointed. God's protection is comprehensive, guarding not only the blessing itself, but also our hearts, our minds, and our spiritual readiness to receive it fully. The awareness that delays are divine protection encourages perseverance, strengthens faith, and fosters gratitude. We learn to trust that God is working on our behalf, even when we cannot see the results, and we recognize that His timing is flawless. The blessing is preserved, the gift is secure, and the season of waiting is purposeful, shaping us to fully embrace the fullness of what has been reserved with our name on it. This is the promise of divine faithfulness and sovereignty. The moment God decides to release what He has reserved, the blessing is unstoppable, unshakable, and reversible. Many of us live in fear that opportunities may slip away, that circumstances may change, or that opposition may thwart what we hope for. Yet, God's favor is not subject to the limitations of the world. When He opens the door, it remains open, and no force on earth or in hell can shut it. This is the assurance that what God has prepared specifically for you is not temporary, fragile, or fleeting. It is protected by His power, sealed with His authority, and sustained by His promises, ensuring that the blessing reaches its intended purpose and brings fulfillment beyond what we could imagine. The permanence of God's open door also reminds us that His timing is perfect. There is no need for fear or anxiety about competition or missed opportunities. What belongs to you cannot be taken by someone else. because God's allocation is precise, intentional, and personal. The enemy may attempt to intimidate, delay, or mislead, but the power of God's decision supersedes all attempts to hinder it. Once God releases the blessing, it is accompanied by a spiritual guarantee of protection, ensuring that it flows into your life in fullness, in abundance, and in alignment with His divine plan. This permanence provides a foundation of faith and confidence, allowing us to step boldly into the season of fulfillment without hesitation, doubt, or worry. The permanence of an open door also speaks to God's unchanging nature. He is faithful, consistent, and unwavering in His promises. Unlike human plans that can fail, doors that can close, or opportunities that can vanish, God's blessing is anchored in eternity. When He decides to release what He has reserved, it is a declaration that His favor, provision, and promises are steadfast. The door does not fluctuate with circumstances, and the blessing does not diminish with delay. What God opens, no one can shut, and this truth forms our understanding of security, hope, and expectation. It assures us that divine timing is always accurate, divine protection is always effective, and divine purpose is always fulfilled. The assurance of an unclosable door also empowers us to act in faith. When God opens a door, He equips us to step through with confidence, knowing that we are entering into a season that has been prepared specifically for us. There is no need to look back in fear or doubt, because the blessing comes with a guarantee of support, guidance, and sustainability. God does not release His gifts haphazardly. He opens doors when we are ready, when the timing is right, and when the conditions are aligned for maximum impact. The door remains open as a testimony of His faithfulness, and a signal that we are now entering a divine season that cannot be interrupted, reversed, or taken away. This principle also calls for readiness and obedience. While the door remains open, we are responsible for walking through with faith, purpose, and diligence. God's favor does not remove our role in participating with the blessing. It simply ensures that the opportunity is secure and enduring. By stepping forward with courage, wisdom, and trust, we honor the permanence of what God has opened and fully access the provision that has been reserved for us. The blessing will not only meet our immediate needs, but will also overflow into areas of life we did not anticipate, bringing transformation, growth, and fulfillment that aligns with God's plan. Finally, the knowledge that God opens doors that remain open inspires perseverance and hope. No matter how long the waiting, how intense the struggle, or how fierce the opposition, we can trust that the moment God chooses to act is decisive and final. Once He releases, the blessing cannot be undone. This understanding cultivates confidence, strengthens faith, and encourages patience, knowing that what God has reserved for us will manifest fully, permanently, and powerfully, transforming our lives in ways that reflect His glory and His divine purpose. As we reflect on the truths shared today, we are reminded that God's blessings are not random, nor are they accidental. Every promise, every favor, and every opportunity that has been reserved for us carries our name, written by the hand of a God who knows our hearts, our struggles, and our potential. The journey to receive these blessings may include waiting, testing, and preparation, but each moment is purposeful, designed to align us with the wisdom, strength, and spiritual readiness required to steward what is ours. We have learned that God's timing is perfect, that delays are not denials but divine protection, and that the obstacles we face are not signs of His absence but evidence of His care. The blessings He has kept in reserve cannot be stolen, lost, or diminished, for they are safeguarded by His authority and power, and they will manifest at the appointed moment in ways that exceed our imagination. Every step of faith, every act of obedience, and every prayer offered with sincerity becomes part of the spiritual key that unlocks what God has destined specifically for our lives. As we embrace this understanding, it becomes clear that our role is not passive waiting but active participation through faith, trust, and perseverance. Faith is the force that bridges heaven's provision with the realities of our lives. It transforms waiting into preparation, tests into strength, and longing into expectation. By walking in faith, we demonstrate readiness to receive the blessings that God has meticulously planned, and we align ourselves with His will in ways that magnify the impact of what He releases. Patience becomes a sacred tool, refining our character, deepening our trust, and shaping our hearts so that when the blessings arrive, we are prepared to honor them, steward them well, and allow them to serve God's greater purpose. Every delay, every trial, and every moment of obedience contributes to the fullness of what has been reserved, ensuring that the moment of release brings not just fulfillment, but transformation, growth, and glory to God. We are also reminded that God's favor is unstoppable and irreversible. When He opens a door, it remains open, and no force of opposition can close it. The blessings He releases are permanent, protected, and aligned with our divine destiny. This truth gives us confidence to step forward boldly, knowing that God's promises are unshakable and that His timing, His preparation, and His protection are perfect. As we move forward, we are called to walk through these doors with faith, courage, and diligence, recognizing that every blessing carries responsibility, purpose, and the power to change our lives and the lives of others. Our trust in God, our perseverance, and our obedience transform the unseen into the tangible, the reserved into the realized, and the promised into the experienced. Today, let us embrace the confidence that God is unlocking blessings with our names on them, and let us walk in expectation, patience, and faith, fully prepared to receive, steward, and celebrate what He has destined for us. Let us rejoice in the assurance that nothing can stop, steal, or diminish the gifts of God, and let us honor Him by living lives of gratitude, obedience, and steadfast trust. Thank you for opening your hearts to these truths, for walking this journey of faith together, and for allowing the message of God's unwavering favor to inspire, strengthen, and transform your life. May your faith be unwavering, your patience be rewarded, and your heart remain ready to receive every blessing that God has reserved just for you.